Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video about why people have trouble connecting to gods. Hit that thumbs up down there, it really helps out the channel, and feel free to leave a comment. That also helps traffic to the channel. And feel free to become a patron on Patreon at patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. Go there, you get all my YouTube videos there if you become a patron, and you get extra content that I only publish on Patreon. At any rate, let's get down to the video of why people have trouble connecting to gods. So there's a whole lot of thinking that has to change when you start. Let's say that you weren't brought up in a pagan path, you weren't brought up worshiping various gods. Odds are you're brought up being Christian, or maybe your parents were atheists or something like that if you're in the United States, because there's not a whole lot of people who are just brought up worshiping gods or working with spirits or anything like that. I'll go ahead and start with a story to kind of illustrate this. So I remember being at this was months ago, but I remember being at Goody Goody. It's a liquor store, and I would for a long time, and I still wear it off and on. Since I'm working with Hastur a lot, I wear the yellow sign. It's in silver that I got from somebody in Poland. But before this, I was doing a lot of work with Odin and Thor to a lesser extent. But I was wearing the Thor's hammer Mjolnir around my neck for many months, years actually. That's the thing that I've worn more than any other pendant or any other piece of kind of jewelry that goes around my neck. But I was wearing one of those, a Mjolnir. So I remember being in Goody Goody months ago, and there was somebody else in there that worked there that always wore a Mjolnir as well. And he always liked saying hi to me and called me brother, things like that. Very friendly. And somebody else also a Goody Goody wore one. It's always kind of nice to see when somebody else is wearing one, because we kind of know what it means. It's kind of a symbol of, we're affiliated with Norse gods, and we kind of and it's also kind of like a rebellion against Christianity to some, because that's how the Norse pagans wore that during the time of Christianization of Europe, of northwestern Europe. At any rate, so one of the other ladies, an older woman, this guy's probably around my age, probably around 30. Another woman that works there that I know kind of well. She's like, what? She's like, what's a Mjolnir? I'm like, it's a pendant dedicated to Thor. And she's like, who's Thor? I'm like, he's a god. And she's like, never heard of him. I'm like, okay. But so even if you haven't, not everybody's gonna know the word Mjolnir. They're gonna know the word, the term Thor's hammer. Not having heard of Thor with all the Marvel movies and stuff, that's interesting. But even if you have heard of him, you'll often get things like, oh yeah, like from the movies. It's like, yeah, they got that from somewhere else. But and they'll often not know the word Mjolnir and all that. But they'll also be surprised that, what, you worship Thor? Like, isn't that like a fake pagan god or something like that? And they never go that far with me, because I'm kind of like upfront about things, and I don't know, I tend to not look like a guy you want to like poke too much, but it does happen with other people. But there's this idea of time that you have to overcome in the United States, being mainly a Christian nation, or one that's also has a lot of atheists now. There's this idea of time that you have to like overcome when you're connecting to gods. A lot of these societal pressures, one of them is the idea of time. So when you think of the Christianization of Europe, when you think of the effect Christianity had on culture, on society, you can refer to the idea of Christianity thinking that, time is a single line. You start with God creating everything. You start with, spreading everything, the fall of Adam and Eve, the flood, lots of years of other stuff. I'm not going to go through it all. And then, Christ comes, he's crucified, and then, eventually he's going to come back. And when he comes back, and the rapture and all that, and then all the bad people go to hell forever, all the good people go to heaven forever, and everybody will live happily ever after in heaven for eternity. But all of this exists on a line. Even with Greek tradition and mythology, they thought of things as more of a circle, but they also had a titanomachy. Like for Christians, for instance, like in the United States, it's the apocalypse that happens like at the end. For the Greeks and their gods, it was a titanomachy, which happened at the beginning, and that was the worst thing. And then, kind of the best kind of goes in cycles. But even for the Greeks, time was a cycle. For a lot of pagan traditions, Norse traditions, or I kind of only know about like Norse and Hindu, for instance, Hindus as well, like Hindu gods in this context. But everything happens in cycles. Everything's a circle. Everything's perpetuating. You have phases, just like you have phases of the year. Everything is a reflection, as above, so below. A continuous reflection throughout the realms, throughout segmentations of time, but nothing is a singular line. That affects even an atheist person. They think, as far as time goes, in a line. You have to overcome that. You have to think of things as not having a beginning and an end, or a continuous motion of self-perpetuation, withering, destruction, and then rebirth, and then growth, self-perpetuation, life, and then cycle starts over again. And you don't have to understand cycle just like that, but it's useful to think of it in some circular fashion because that's a reflection of our reality, our true reality. It's not a line. It's something that you have to overcome mentally. So that is kind of like the beginning part. For you to connect mentally to gods, to be able to channel easily, which I can channel Odin and Hastur pretty easily, especially Odin. I don't have that luck with like other beings, even Ma Kali. I don't have that luck with channeling her. Odin, very easy to channel for me. Channeling is just like basically clearing your mind, allowing things that aren't created by you, but allowing thoughts to come into your head from a god, from an entity, from even a spirit. But one of the kind of the locks on our mind is the time thing. Another thing is our idea of what is real, what is material, what exists, our idea of existence. So a lot of time in society, we're taught that this is that, this is this thing, that is that thing. We divide our world endlessly. I've talked about this in other videos. Like we have a doctor for foot, eye, ear. All of these specializations and understandings are useful in a societal context. They're not useful when we're thinking about different dimensions existing in a singular place all at once. Odin is not somewhere else. He's not on a different planet in this universe. Odin is right here, just in a different phase, just in a different frequency of reality. It's much easier for gods and spirits to attune to our frequency if we know how to reach out the right ways, if we reach out sincerely and we don't try to control them. I would not try to control gods or spirits. That's just not something. I don't try to control them. I try to reach out to them and communicate with them. But everything exists. Like every being you want to communicate with, it's not separate from you. It's not in a different place. It's right here where you are as well. In the Christian iconography, we see Jesus looking up. He's looking up at the sky. Really, he's looking at his third eye, but that's a whole nother thing. And there, the reason he's looking at his third eye is because the third eye is kind of like a trans-dimensional point that's kind of a reflection of our pineal gland. But regardless, things can exist in the same space, and just in different frequencies. So overcoming that idea of things being separate, that's another thing to overcome. That's another thing that you need to overcome if you want to channel or connect with God as well. Try to overcome the idea that these beings are so beyond ourself and so different from ourselves that they wouldn't like the things that we like. That they're not similar to us in what we like or what we would like to have. It's like, it might sound strange to offer coins to a spirit or a god under a tree, like a few pennies, and say a little prayer or something like that. You're like, why does a god or a spirit need pennies? They are as much fed by the offering and the sincerity of it as the actual things, but they also like things. They're not so alien to us that gods and spirits don't like things like we do. And it helps them be more familiar when you interact with them in this way, and it helps you form a connection with them better. the stories are important. The stories of gods and spirits are important. But I find, and this is a whole nother thing, the stories of gods and spirits are important. They're foundational for you making that initial link. Learn the stories, memorize them, learn the symbols, learn the right offerings, learn certain prayers that are traditional. All these are really great inroads. All these are really good ways to link with a god or spirit. But I find that people get too confined by the stories. So somebody might really like Loki just from the few stories that we have, or there's more than a few, but there's not a whole lot of stories. Or somebody might really attach themselves to like Lilith because Lilith wouldn't bow before Adam and wanted to be equal. And even just that aspect right there, people get so focused on that little piece that they immediately like this being. I'm not saying you shouldn't like Lilith, but people get confined so much by the stories. It hampers your ability to not only channel, but to learn more from this god. Personal gnosis is so vital, and it's something that you can't really hold up as proof in a in a spiritual community, or a community of people who are also devotees as proof. But it doesn't need to be proof for a whole community. It can just be proof for you. It can just be connections for you. But you still have to have a relationship to, am I just making this up? After a time, whatever you're getting from a god or goddess, you'll trial and error. You don't have to believe everything that you think, or you don't have to think you're channeling correctly, or you don't have to believe you're seeing a sign every time. Sometimes just having your head, I'm open to the idea. It's not definitely a sign, or it's not definitely a channeling, but I'm open to it. And over time, you'll start to be able to see these things more clearly. What is actually a sign? What is actually channeling? What is a god or goddess actually doing for me? But it still requires like trial and error and a process. But do not get so confined by the stories that you think that this god or spirit can't do something else for you, or might not act in a different way in your life. They're not always going to destroy. They're not always going to create. Think of gods and spirits as more all-encompassing beings that have many facets, like human beings. Break that idea of they are just the stories, or try to expand your own personal gnosis of these beings beyond what is indicative based on the stories. That'll unlock your mind in a number of ways. I guess there's just one more thing to talk about in this video. And that's, so in regards to personal gnosis, gain your own, write a whole bunch of stuff down. Every little experience that you have or think you have, or any little thought you have about a god or spirit, it might be significant. Write a lot of stuff down, or make video recordings. I did that for a lot of stuff. If anybody's been watching this for a while, understands that. You'll find that over time, you'll forget the little things, and you won't be able to track them. And you'll miss patterns. And it's just easier, and it's wonderful to pass down as well to a child, or to a descendant, or to a friend, or to a beginner along the path. Start writing all this stuff, recording all this stuff now, so that you can pass on the knowledge and kind of really reflect on it in a more long form, seeing all the things, and then your relationship and your path will grow just from viewing all the things you wrote down or recorded or learned. That's very vital. And you're going to find people in, for instance, when I work with the Elder Futhark runes, when I work with them, you'll find a lot of people, I believe something kind of that's really crazy to a lot of people who work with runes. I believe that they're primordial spirits. They're called the gods of the gods. I believe they're primordial spirits. There's conscious entities, but they're so intrinsic to reality that they're more like a primordial spirit than a god. But you'll find a lot of people believe like, no, they're not. And they're not self-aware. They're just used for magic. They're just symbols for magic that use like that. They're not entities, and they're not primordial spirits. I've had a lot of people fight back with me on that. I'm like, that's fine. We don't have to agree. And then I've had multiple people say I'm poisoning the community, the pagan community. I'm like, what? No, that's not. Try not to be so forceful with your ideas. Remain humble about your ideas, because not only because you won't get pushback, because you can fight for yourself, and you should, but keep in mind that you still could be wrong. And don't be so adamant that you're right. because if you do, you usually miss a lot of things. And that also usually confines your thinking and keeps you from connecting to gods and spirits. This is an ongoing path. Try to keep on doing the little things, the little offerings, and keep on remembering the stories. Talk to your gods, talk to your spirits often. That really helps you make a connection. Talk to them like they're right there. If you want to do it in an altar space or your shrine space, and that's it, that's fine. If you want to do it throughout your day, it's also fine. It helps you attune. That'll help you attune to gods and spirits as well. But regardless, thank you very much for watching. Once again, hit that thumbs up down there, the like button. It really helps out the channel. And feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to share this wherever you desire. As long as you give me credit, I'm okay with that, and I support that. And feel free to become a patron once more at patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. And you get extra content there, some special ritual journal entries and pictures that you wouldn't get otherwise. And you get all my YouTube videos there. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. All of you, continue along your paths and have a wonderful day.